Senator Mark Warner serves on both committees. He's a Democrat representing the Commonwealth of Virginia in the U.S. Senate. He also serves as chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator, thank you for giving us some time here on Scripps News. We certainly appreciate it. You tweeted about the hearing on Tuesday, writing on X this, quote, given the prospect of foreign adversaries using AI to shape U.S. political debates, our committee will seek to ensure the U.S. government is positioned to track, expose, and disrupt those efforts. So I guess the first question is, we're just a few months out. How are you going to do it?
Well, first of all, let's go through the problem. Your reporter went through some of this. The truth is our adversaries, China, Russia, Iran, they realize it's relatively cheap to try to either cyber attack our elections or spread disinformation. Second thing, and again, the election official pointed out, people believe crazy conspiracy theories on the internet now. So the fact that there's that kind of stuff out there and it could be amplified by a foreign spy service ought to concern us. And then finally, artificial intelligence tools. The ability to change your voice, your face, my face, and have it appear as something real. We've never had that at a speed and scale ever before. So we need to beware. Russia's already trying to do this in the European elections. What I want to hear from the government officials today, the FBI, CISA, the Director of National Intelligence, is what is the plan to help educate Americans, as well as what else are we doing, particularly on cyber protections, to make sure our infrastructure is secure. And I think we're going to have to keep pounding this drum, because Lord knows we've got enough differences between Americans. We don't need those exacerbated by foreign governments who want to do us harm.
Senator, you also serve on the Senate Rules Committee, and this morning the committee plans to talk about 3 separate bills related to AI. Now, these bills, they range from bans, calls for transparency, and guidelines. We had a guest, an AI researcher, on yesterday who said that it's so easy to do this, the spoofing, the voice spoofing that you mentioned as well. What are your concerns if guardrails are not put in place before the 2024 election, with so much misinformation out there, and just how easy it is for this to kind of wreak havoc?
Well, I am obviously very concerned. I was a technology guy before I got into the Senate. This scares the dickens out of me. You know, I do hope in the Rules Committee we will at least advance legislation like this. I don't know whether it'll ever get through the House. So what we're relying on at this point was a voluntary agreement that 20 of the tech companies, all of the big ones, Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and even TikTok, all said that they would work to take down altered context in the form of political advertising. They made that promise in February. What worries me is I've not seen any beef or any actions from those tech companies, and we'll be able to see this play out in advance of American elections, because the Europeans go to vote for the European Parliament in June. So I am worried that the voluntary guardrails just won't be enough.
So much of the toothpaste is already out of the tube at this point.
Right.
It's developing so quickly.
Yeah.
And Russia interfered in 2016 and again in 2020, and now here we are in 2024. So I think people should be rightfully skeptical that we're as on top of it as we could be. This isn't a new problem. We were talking about this 2 elections ago, and here we are. I know the technology's gotten even more dangerous. I get that. But here's my question. They can interfere. It's easy. We're probably not as ready as we should be as a country. What does Russia want? What does China want? What does Iran want? Who do they want to win, and why?
Well, first of all, they want to pit Americans against Americans. I mean, I think sometimes people forget in 2016, they literally, using fake websites, created a conflict for example, in Houston, where people who were pro-Muslim and anti-Muslim came together in a demonstration, and thank goodness the cops were there. We could have had violence. The ability, and as we've seen from January 6th and elsewhere, the ability to kind of stir up Americans against one another, that's their first goal. Second goal is to try to promote candidates that are going to be more friendly to them. China, there was a publicly disclosed effort in 2022 where China aggressively tried to take down a individual of Chinese heritage who was running for Congress who was against the Beijing regime. In terms of the presidential elections, as we've seen, one thing that continues to be strange is that Donald Trump, while he has criticized every world leader, every political leader in America, Democrat and Republican alike, the one guy he's never said a bad word about is Vladimir Putin. So viewers can take what they want from that inference. But I do think we need to be aware, and the best thing we can do is kind of be educated, make sure if something seems a little too bizarre, maybe to think twice rather than believing it immediately, and to continue to put pressure on the social media companies to be more responsible in terms of identifying altered content, deepfake type videos.
And they're getting harder and harder to decipher what is real and what is not. That media literacy, though, that is really huge in what kids should be taught in schools now. And I want to ask you about TikTok, because you mentioned TikTok as one of those platforms that can be easily manipulated just because of how many people are on it. President Biden signed into law a bill that you supported that would ban TikTok if their China-based parent company ByteDance fails to divest the app within a year. We were just talking about how there's a billionaire who is planning to formulate some money to buy the U.S. arm of that social media platform. What are your concerns heading into the election year?
Well, my concerns are this. First of all, China would never let, for example, Facebook or YouTube. China doesn't even allow the TikTok that our kids to see to appear in their country. And it's not just America. India's already banned TikTok. Virtually every nation state, Western nation state in the world has banned it, at least off their government phones. The British Broadcasting Company warned their reporters, don't be on TikTok. The Chinese will spy on you as a journalist. And there are reasons why we say we shouldn't have foreign governments control media outlets. TikTok's 170 million Americans, 90 minutes a day. A lot of young people get all their news from TikTok. TikTok has more potential propaganda power than Fox News and MSNBC combined. Do we really want a company that is ultimately controlled as a Chinese company, ByteDance, that owns TikTok, and that company has to answer to the Communist Party of China, being able to slightly twist that algorithm and generate content that is favorable to the CCP? China would never allow that kind of activity in their country. I think we should not allow it here. And I think there's a lot of creativity on TikTok. All I'm saying is go ahead and sell the company to an American company, a British company, a French company, just somebody that is not ultimately controlled by an adversary. One thing that could help that is that about 40% of ByteDance, the Chinese company, is actually controlled by American investors. They ought to do the right thing and encourage that kind of transaction.
One more thing before we let you go. Closer to home, I saw a report last night that in swing states around this country, there are at least 80 to 100 people in leadership positions who are election deniers, who support what happened on January 6th, who don't believe Joe Biden's the rightful president of the United States. We talk about Iran and Russia and China. I get it. What about the call coming from inside the House from our own fellow Americans who are now in positions to administer an election in November?
I was here in the Senate, on the Senate floor on January 6th. This was not some kind of peaceful walk in the park. This was a group of people that wanted to, frankly, overturn an election. And I just hope and pray that if people get into these responsible positions, they will take a deep breath. The one thing about our country has been peaceful transfer of power. It distinguishes us from virtually every country around the world. I think, as even the Trump officials said, that we're responsible for elections in 2020. 2020 was the safest, most accurately counted election in our history. That came from the head of the cybersecurity agency, Chris Krebs. He lost his job when he said it, but I think he was factually true. But it does worry. It worries me as well from your earlier report. If you're one of these folks that are an election official, you don't do it for the money, you do it because you believe in democracy. If you are now going to be the victim of some of these folks who are frankly want to take out all their anger at the government on election officials, I understand why people are concerned. I think we The law says you should not be interfering in an election. You shouldn't be interfering with election officials doing their job. And I think that law needs to be enforced. Otherwise, we turn into a whole lot of other nations in the world that don't have free and fair elections.
Senator Mark Warner, as always, sir, thank you for giving us some time this morning. We sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
More news after the break.